The marble lobby echoed with a sound sharper than breaking glass. "Get out, now!" The words cut through the air like a slap. Every head turned. At the center of the Grand Hotel lobby, beneath a chandelier worth more than most people's homes, stood a young black woman frozen in place. Her hands trembled at her sides, fingers clenched around a worn canvas bag. Her coat was thin, her shoes scuffed, and her eyes were wide with disbelief and pain. I just need a moment," she whispered, her voice barely surviving the roar of the room. "Please, I'm waiting for someone." The hotel manager took a step closer, invading her space. He was tall, impeccably dressed, his name badge gleaming against a tailored suit. His smile was sharp, practiced, and cruel. "You people always say that," he sneered loudly, making sure the entire lobby could hear. "Waiting for someone, looking for handouts, trying to sneak into places you don't belong." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Phones slowly lifted into the air. A couple near the concierge desk whispered behind their hands. A businessman pretended to check his watch but didn't look away. A tourist's camera lens subtly tilted toward the unfolding humiliation. The woman swallowed hard. "I'm not asking for anything," she said, her voice shaking now. This hotel, I was told to come here." The manager laughed, not a nervous laugh, not an uncertain one, a mocking laugh. "Told to come here." He repeated, "This is a 5-star establishment, not a shelter. You don't just wander in because you feel like it." Her cheeks burned. She could feel it, the heat, the shame, the eyes. "I can show you my ID," she said quickly, fumbling inside her bag. "I can explain." He slapped his hand down on the marble counter so hard the sound cracked through the lobby. "I don't want your explanation," he snapped. "I want you gone right now before you make our guests uncomfortable." Uncomfortable. The word hung in the air like poison. She looked around at the crystal chandeliers, the polished floors, the men in suits, the women in silk dresses, people who looked past her, through her, like she was already invisible, or worse, like she was a stain. "I didn't do anything wrong," she said softly, her eyes glistening. "I'm just standing here." The manager leaned in, lowering his voice just enough to sound threatening, but still loud enough to humiliate. "You don't look like someone who belongs here," he said. "And I'm not risking my reputation or my guests for you." Her lip trembled. A tear escaped, trailing down her cheek. Still no one moved, no one spoke. The silence of the crowd pressed against her chest, heavier than the manager's words. Some people shifted uncomfortably, others nodded slightly as if agreeing. A few whispered, "This is getting uncomfortable," but not one person said, "Stop." The manager straightened his jacket as if proud. "Security," he barked. 2 guards at the far end of the lobby began to move. That's when her knees nearly gave out. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I'm begging you, just a minute. I came here because I was told someone would help me." The manager scoffed. "Help you?" he repeated loudly. "This isn't a charity, sweetheart, and judging by the way you look, you can't even afford to be standing on this floor." The words landed like blows. Her head dropped. Her shoulders curled inward as if she were trying to disappear into herself. A man in the crowd cleared his throat, then said nothing. A woman shook her head but turned away. The guards were closer now, and then a voice spoke from behind, calm, controlled, dangerously quiet. "That's enough." The room shifted. The manager turned, irritated. "Sir, this doesn't concern you?" "It concerns everyone," the voice replied. The woman looked up, startled. Behind the crowd stood a man in a dark coat, travel bag at his side. He didn't look angry. He didn't raise his voice, but something about him made the air feel different. He was watching the woman not with judgment, not with suspicion, but with unmistakable concern. The manager scoffed again. "If you're another one trying to defend her, you can leave with her." The man's eyes flicked to the manager's badge, then back to the woman, and for just a brief moment, something unreadable passed across his face. The guard stopped walking. The crowd held its breath. And the woman, still shaking, still humiliated, had no idea that the man watching her knew exactly who she was, or that within minutes everything in that lobby was about to change. Before we continue, question of the day, have you ever been judged or humiliated because of how you looked, where you came from, or what someone assumed about you? Tell us your story in the comments, and let us know where you're watching from today. Your voice matters. Because what happened next exposed more than prejudice. It exposed power, secrets, and a truth the hotel manager never imagined walking through those doors. But to understand how this moment came to be, how this woman ended up standing alone in the center of that marble floor, we need to go back. Back to the beginning of her day. Back to the quiet morning where none of this had happened yet. Let's go back to how this story truly began this morning. The morning began long before the sun fully rose. In a narrow, crumbling apartment building on the edge of the city, where paint peeled like tired skin and the hallways always smelled faintly of damp concrete, Aaliyah Brooks woke to the sound of coughing. It wasn't her alarm clock. It was her mother. Aaliyah's eyes snapped open instantly. She pushed herself up from the thin mattress on the floor, already alert, already worried. The room was dim, lit only by pale gray light leaking through a cracked window. The heater in the corner sat silent, broken for months now, and the cold had settled deep into the walls. "Mama," Aaliyah whispered. Another cough answered her, rough, wet, painful. Aaliyah was 26 years old, but moments like this made her feel both older and impossibly young at the same time. She wrapped a sweater around her shoulders and crossed the room in quiet steps, kneeling beside the small bed where her mother lay. Lorraine Brooks had once been a strong woman. A woman who laughed loudly, sang while cleaning, and worked double shifts without complaint. But illness had a way of stealing strength slowly, cruelly. The cancer had taken her hair first, then her appetite, then her independence. Now even breathing seemed like a struggle. "I'm here," Aaliyah said softly, placing a cool hand on her mother's forehead. "I've got you." Lorraine opened her eyes, forcing a weak smile. "You didn't sleep," she murmured. Aaliyah smiled back, though her chest tightened. "I did, a little." It was a lie. She had spent most of the night staring at the ceiling, counting numbers in her head, trying to make impossible math work. Rent, utilities, groceries, medicine, always the medicine. She helped her mother sit up, supporting her carefully, then reached for the chipped mug on the bedside table. Inside was warm water and the last half-dose of pain medication. Lorraine noticed immediately. "You're cutting them again," she said. Aaliyah hesitated. "Just until today," she replied gently. "I'll get more." Her mother shook her head weakly. "Baby, you don't have to keep doing this." "Yes," Aaliyah said firmly, though her voice wavered. "I do." She helped her mother drink, wiped her lips, then tucked the thin blanket tighter around her shoulders. Every movement was careful, loving, intentional. This was who Aaliyah was, not loud, not demanding, but strong in the quiet ways that mattered. After making sure her mother was comfortable, Aaliyah moved into the kitchen, if it could be called that. The fridge hummed loudly, almost empty. A loaf of bread with only 2 slices left, a half jar of peanut butter, a single apple bruised on one side. She stared at it for a moment, then cut it in half, setting the better piece aside for her mother. As the kettle warmed, Aaliyah leaned against the counter, closing her eyes briefly. The exhaustion pressed down on her like a weight. She worked 2 jobs, cleaning offices at night and assisting at a daycare during the day, but no matter how hard she worked, it was never enough. Still, she never complained. She believed in dignity, she believed in kindness, and she believed desperately that if she just kept going, something had to change. Aaliyah dressed carefully that morning. She chose her cleanest jeans, a plain blouse, and the same coat she'd owned for years. She braided her hair neatly, smoothing down flyaways with water because she couldn't afford styling products. She looked in the cracked mirror and lifted her chin. "You are worthy," she whispered to herself. "No matter what." Before leaving, she knelt beside her mother again. "I have to go out for a bit," she said. "Ms. Turner from the clinic called yesterday. She said there might be an option, someone willing to help." Lorraine frowned. "Help how?" Aaliyah hesitated. "She said there's an investor in town," she explained slowly. "Someone connected to the hospital, very wealthy, very powerful. She told me to go to the Grand Regency Hotel this morning, said that's where he's staying." Her mother's eyes widened. "That place, baby, that's not—" "I know," Aaliyah said quickly, "but she promised she wouldn't send me there if it wasn't real." Lorraine reached out, gripping her daughter's hand with surprising strength. "Promise me something." Aaliyah looked at her. "Promise me you won't let them make you feel small." Aaliyah swallowed hard. "I promise." But even as she said it, fear curled in her stomach. She kissed her mother's forehead, grabbed her canvas bag, and stepped out into the cold morning air. The neighborhood was already waking up. A man swept the sidewalk outside a corner store. Kids in worn backpacks waited for the bus. Life went on even when it felt like yours was hanging by a thread. As Aaliyah walked, she replayed Ms. Turner's words over. "He's not like the others. He actually listens. Just go, please." Aaliyah didn't know why a billionaire investor would care about a woman like her, but hope, even fragile hope, was a powerful thing. She boarded the bus, clutching her bag, staring out the window as the city slowly changed. Buildings grew taller, streets grew cleaner, cars grew shinier. And somewhere deep in her chest, a quiet prayer formed, "Please let today be different." She had no idea that by the end of the day, her life would be unrecognizable, or that before kindness could find her, cruelty would strike first. By the time Aaliyah stepped off the bus near the medical district, the knot in her stomach had tightened into something almost unbearable. The hospital loomed ahead, gray, towering, indifferent. She had walked these steps so many times they felt etched into her bones. Every automatic door whooshing open carried memories with it. Long waits, hushed hallways, doctors speaking in careful tones, bills folded and unfolded until the creases softened. Inside, the smell of antiseptic wrapped around her like a cold reminder. She checked in at the front desk, offering a polite smile she no longer expected to be returned. The receptionist glanced at the computer, then at Aaliyah, her expression flattening. "Ms. Brooks," she said, "billing asked to see you again." Aaliyah's heart sank. Again, she followed the familiar path to the small office at the end of the corridor. The walls were bare except for a framed sign that read, "Compassion is our mission." Aaliyah had stopped believing that slogan months ago. Inside, a woman with glasses sat behind a desk stacked with folders. She didn't look unkind, just tired. "Please sit," the woman said. Aaliyah did, folding her hands in her lap. "I'll be honest with you," the woman began, not looking up from the file. "Your mother's treatment cannot continue without payment. The balance has exceeded what we can delay." Aaliyah's mouth went dry. "But she needs the medication. She can't go without it." "I understand," the woman said, though her voice carried no real comfort. "But insurance denied further coverage, and the charity fund—" "I already applied," Aaliyah interrupted softly. "Twice." The woman nodded. "And it was exhausted. I'm sorry." Sorry, that word had become meaningless. Aaliyah felt her chest tighten. "How long do we have?" The woman finally looked up. "Your mother's next dose is due tomorrow morning. Without it," she hesitated, "her pain will increase significantly and there may be complications." Aaliyah stared at the desk, fighting to breathe. "How much?" she whispered. The number that followed felt unreal, like something from another life, another world. "I don't have that," Aaliyah said, her voice barely audible. "I know," the woman replied gently. "That's why Ms. Turner suggested you come see me before noon." Aaliyah's head snapped up. "Ms. Turner?" "She left a note," the woman said, sliding a folded paper across the desk. "She said you might need direction." Aaliyah unfolded the note with shaking hands. "He's arriving this morning. Grand Regency Hotel. Don't be afraid to ask. This is your chance, her chance." Aaliyah closed her eyes. The room felt too small, the air too thin. She thanked the woman, though she wasn't sure why, and stepped back into the hallway. The world around her blurred as she leaned against the wall, pressing a hand to her mouth to keep from crying out loud. She had tried everything. She had borrowed money until there was no one left to ask. She had worked extra shifts until her body begged for rest. She had sold what little she owned, her old laptop, a necklace her father had given her before he passed. There was nothing left. And now time itself was turning against her. Tomorrow morning, that was the deadline. Aaliyah left the hospital and sat on a bench outside, head in her hands. The city moved around her, cars passing, people laughing, life continuing without pause. Her phone buzzed, a message from her landlord. Rent overdue. Final notice. Her breath caught. She stared at the screen, then locked it, slipping the phone back into her bag as if that could make the problems disappear. For the first time in a long while, Aaliyah cried, not loudly, just silent tears sliding down her cheeks as she stared at the concrete beneath her feet. "I don't know what to do," she whispered. The words fell into the space beside her, unanswered. Minutes passed, maybe longer, she didn't know. Eventually, she wiped her face with her sleeve and straightened her back. Crying wouldn't save her mother. Fear wouldn't either. There was only one thing left. She stood. The Grand Regency Hotel was only a few blocks away, but with every step toward it, the weight on her chest grew heavier. She imagined the looks she might receive, the questions, the way people would see her before hearing her. A poor black woman walking into a palace of wealth. She had lived long enough to know how that usually ended. Still, she walked, because love makes you brave in ways fear never can. As the hotel came into view, its glass doors reflecting the sky like a barrier between worlds, Aaliyah slowed her pace. Her palms were damp, her heart raced. What if they laugh at me? What if they kick me out? What if this hope is just another lie? She thought of her mother's labored breathing. Tomorrow morning. That thought pushed her forward. She crossed the street, dodging traffic, and stood on the sidewalk in front of the hotel. The entrance was guarded by polished brass, uniformed staff, and an air of importance that made her feel small before she even stepped inside. People passed her without a glance. She clutched her bag tighter. "I'm doing this for her," she whispered to herself. "Just walk in, just ask." Her legs felt heavy, but she moved. Because humiliation was temporary, but losing her mother, that would be forever. With one last shaky breath, Aaliyah stepped toward the doors, knowing that once she crossed that threshold, there would be no turning back. and that whatever awaited her inside would change everything. The glass doors of the Grand Regency Hotel slid open with a soft, effortless sigh. To Aaliyah, the sound felt louder than thunder. The first thing that hit her wasn't the beauty, it was the cold. Not temperature, but atmosphere. The air inside felt different, cleaner, heavier, as if it belonged to people who had never worried about tomorrow. Her shoes tapped softly against the polished marble floor. Each step echoed, announcing her presence in a way she hadn't expected. She instinctively slowed, suddenly aware of everything about herself: the fraying edge of her coat, the faded color of her jeans, the canvas bag clutched too tightly in her hand. The lobby was enormous. Golden light poured down from a chandelier that looked like frozen rain. Fresh flowers filled towering vases. The scent of expensive perfume and polished wood floated through the air. And everywhere people, men in tailored suits speaking in low, confident voices, women with perfect posture and effortless elegance, guests who moved like they belonged because they did. Aaliyah felt like she had walked into someone else's dream. Her heart pounded so loudly she was certain others could hear it. Just breathe, she told herself. You're allowed to be here, but her body didn't believe it. She passed the concierge desk, noticing the way the receptionist's smile faltered for just a second when their eyes met. Not hostile, just assessing, weighing, deciding. Aaliyah kept walking, her gaze fixed ahead even as her thoughts spiraled. What do I say? Who do I ask for? What if Ms. Turner was wrong? She remembered her mother's voice that morning. Don't let them make you feel small. Aaliyah lifted her chin a little higher. She approached a seating area near the center of the lobby and stopped, unsure of her next move. She didn't want to draw attention, but standing still felt worse, like a target, so she sat. The chair was plush, expensive, and unfamiliar. She perched on the edge, careful not to lean back too much, afraid of wrinkling something she didn't own. She checked the time. Too early. Her foot tapped nervously against the floor. Across the lobby, she noticed a group of hotel staff gathered near the front desk. Among them stood the manager, tall, confident, his laughter ringing sharp and loud. He looked like someone used to being obeyed. Aaliyah's stomach twisted. She looked away quickly. Don't think about him, she told herself. You're just waiting, that's all. Minutes passed. She replayed every word Ms. Turner had said. He arrives this morning. He checks in personally. If he hears your story, he'll help. The idea felt impossible. Why would a billionaire investor care about her life, her problems, her mother? Yet something deep inside her, something stubborn, refused to let go of that hope. She stood again, feeling restless, and moved closer to the entrance where guests arrived and departed. Maybe she'd recognize him. Maybe someone would ask if she needed help. Instead, she felt eyes on her. Not all of them, just enough. A man in a suit glanced at her bag, then looked away. A woman paused mid-conversation, her gaze flicking briefly over Aaliyah before returning to her companion. Two teenage girls giggled, whispering behind manicured hands. Aaliyah felt the familiar burn of being seen, but not understood. You're imagining it, she told herself. Stay calm. Then a voice cut through the low hum of the lobby. Excuse me, she turned. The hotel manager stood a few feet away, his expression already hardened. He looked her up and down in one slow, unmistakable sweep. Yes, Aaliyah said quietly. Can I help you? He asked, though his tone suggested the opposite. I'm just waiting for someone, she replied, choosing her words carefully. He glanced around the lobby, then back at her. Are you a guest? No, Aaliyah admitted. But I was told to come here this morning. Someone is arriving, the manager's lips pressed into a thin line. This area is reserved for guests, he said. If you're not staying here, you'll need to move along. I won't be long, Aaliyah said, panic creeping into her voice. Please, I just need to speak to... He cut her off with a raised hand. We have policies, he said flatly, and you're not following them. Her chest tightened. I'm not causing any trouble, she said. I promise. Something flickered in his eyes, annoyance, suspicion. I've seen this before, he muttered. People loitering, waiting for opportunities. I'm not, Aaliyah started. He didn't let her finish. I'm going to ask you one more time, he said, his voice dropping but growing sharper. Why are you here? Aaliyah opened her mouth, then closed it. Because how do you explain desperation to someone who has never known it? Because how do you say, my mother might die tomorrow, without sounding like a lie? She swallowed. I was told someone here could help me, she said softly. The manager's expression darkened. This is not a help center, he replied, and you're making our guests uncomfortable. The words hit her like a blow. She looked around, suddenly aware that people were watching again, some openly now, some pretending not to. Heat rushed to her face. I can wait somewhere else, she offered quickly. Outside if you want, he shook his head. No, you need to leave the premises. Fear surged through her. Not yet, she thought. Please, not yet. I'm begging you, she whispered. Just a little time. The manager straightened, his voice rising just enough to draw attention. "Ma'am," he said coldly, "you do not belong here," the words echoed, and just like that, the fragile balance snapped. The journey that had begun with hope now teetered on the edge of humiliation, and Aaliyah, standing alone beneath that chandelier, felt the ground begin to crumble beneath her feet. The manager's voice didn't need to be loud to command attention. It carried authority, the kind that came from believing the space belonged to him. "I said you need to leave," he repeated, this time turning slightly so others could hear. "Now." Aaliyah stood frozen, her heart hammering against her ribs. The lobby felt smaller suddenly, as if the walls had shifted inward. Conversations around them faded, replaced by the low hum of anticipation. People sensed something was happening. "I'm not doing anything wrong," Aaliyah said quietly, though her hands shook. "I'm just waiting." The manager let out a short, humorless laugh. "Waiting for what?" he asked. "An opportunity to beg," a few people gasped. Aaliyah's throat tightened. "Please don't talk to me like that." Hilted his head, studying her as if she were an inconvenience. "Like what? Honest?" Her eyes stung. "I told you," she said. "Someone is arriving today. I was told to come here. I don't want to cause trouble." "That's exactly what you're doing," he snapped. "You walk in here dressed like that, sit around, and expect no one to notice." She glanced down at herself instinctively, shame flooding her chest. "I'm clean," she said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "I haven't hurt anyone. I'm not stealing, I just need security," the manager said sharply, not even looking at her now. The word landed like a verdict. Two guards began to move again, slow and deliberate. Their eyes stayed on Aaliyah as if she were a threat. Aaliyah's breathing grew shallow. "No," she whispered. "Please, don't do this." The manager raised his voice. "This young woman is refusing to leave private property," he announced to the lobby. "We will not tolerate disturbances." Private property, disturbance. Every word painted her as a problem. Aaliyah felt dozens of eyes burning into her skin. She could feel the whispers spreading. "Why is she here? She looks lost. Is she homeless?" Each murmur cut deeper than the last. She turned toward the crowd, her voice breaking. "I'm sorry if I bothered anyone," she said. "I really am. I just needed help." No one answered. A man adjusted his tie. A woman checked her phone. Someone near the elevators started recording openly now. The manager folded his arms. "You have 10 seconds to leave before we escort you out." Tears welled in Aaliyah's eyes. "Please," she said again, her voice barely holding together. "Just let me explain." He leaned closer, his voice low and venomous. "People like you always have a story," he said, "and they're always trying to get something for free." Her breath caught. "That's not true," she whispered. "Isn't it?" he replied. "Because from where I'm standing, you look exactly like someone who doesn't belong in a place like this." The cruelty was deliberate, calculated. He wanted to humiliate her. Aaliyah's knees trembled. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to stay upright. "I was told to come here," she repeated weakly. "By the clinic." The manager's eyebrows shot up. "Oh, now it's the clinic," he scoffed. "What's next? You're here to meet the owner." A few people chuckled nervously. Aaliyah felt something inside her crack. "I don't know who I'm meeting," she admitted. "I just know his name is supposed to be on the arrival list." The manager laughed outright now. "This is unbelievable," he said loudly. "Do you know how many important people check into this hotel every day?" He stepped closer, his voice rising. "You think one of them is waiting for you?" Silence followed. Aaliyah's vision blurred. "I don't think I deserve this," she said, her voice shaking. "I'm a person." The manager shook his head in mock pity. "Then act like one and leave when you're told." The guards were only a few steps away now. Aaliyah looked around desperately, hoping, praying someone would speak up, anyone, but the crowd remained passive, their faces blank or curious, unwilling to involve themselves. The silence wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket. She felt smaller than she ever had in her life. Her shoulders sagged. "I'll go," she said softly. The manager smirked, satisfied. "Good," he said. "That's what I thought." As she turned toward the exit, humiliation burning through her veins, her foot caught on the edge of the rug. She stumbled slightly, nearly falling. A few people laughed. That sound broke her. She stopped, gripping her bag so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her chest heaved as tears streamed down her face. "I'm sorry," she whispered, though no one had apologized to her. The manager watched her like a predator watching prey retreat. "Next time," he called after her, "know your place." The words echoed through the lobby. Aaliyah froze. Her hand rested on the strap of her bag. Her shoulders shook. This was it. This was the moment where hope died, where dignity was crushed in public, where the world told her loudly and clearly that she didn't matter. She took one shaky step toward the door, and then a calm voice cut through the tension. "Excuse me." The room shifted. Aaliyah turned slowly. The man from earlier, the one with the travel bag, stood a few feet away now. His expression was calm, but his eyes were sharp. "That's enough," he said quietly. The manager scoffed. "Sir, this doesn't concern you." The man didn't raise his voice. "It does," he replied, "because what you're doing is wrong." The lobby went still. The guards hesitated. The manager's face hardened. "If you don't want trouble, you should step aside." The man glanced at Aaliyah, really looked at her, then back at the manager. "Trouble," he said evenly, "is exactly what you're creating." And for the first time since she walked in, Aaliyah wasn't alone. For a brief moment, Aaliyah believed the man's intervention would change everything. But hope, she had learned, could be dangerous. The manager let out a slow, exaggerated sigh, the kind meant to show annoyance rather than concern. "Sir," he said, turning toward the man with a tight smile, "this situation is under control. I'd appreciate it if you didn't interfere with hotel operations." Aaliyah felt her chest tighten again. The man didn't move. "I'm watching you publicly humiliate a woman who hasn't done anything wrong," he said calmly. "That's not operations. That's abuse." A ripple of discomfort passed through the crowd. The manager's smile vanished. "You don't know the full story." "I know enough," the man replied. The manager laughed sharply. "Of course you do. Everyone thinks they're a hero these days." He turned back to Aaliyah, his voice cutting. "Are you still here?" Aaliyah flinched. She tried to speak, but her throat closed. The tears she had been holding back surged forward, blurring her vision. Her chest rose and fell in short, uneven breaths. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." The words tasted bitter. She had done nothing wrong, yet she was apologizing. The man beside her frowned. "You don't need to apologize." But the manager cut in sharply. "Yes, she does, for wasting our time." Aaliyah's knees felt weak. She could feel herself unraveling, piece by piece, under the weight of the stares, the whispers, the recording phones. Her face burned. Her ears rang. She hugged herself tighter as if trying to keep from falling apart. "Please," she said to no one in particular. "I'll leave." The manager nodded in satisfaction. "That would be best." The guards stepped closer, their presence looming now. They didn't touch her, but they didn't need to. Their proximity was enough. Aaliyah looked at the man who had spoken up. Her eyes were filled with apology and defeat. "Thank you," she murmured. "But it's okay, I'll go." The man's jaw tightened. "It's not okay." But the manager interrupted again, his voice louder. "Sir, if you don't step away, you'll be asked to leave as well." Aaliyah's heart sank. She didn't want to be the reason someone else was thrown out. She didn't want to cause more trouble. She already felt like a burden, like a problem that needed to be removed. She turned toward the exit once more. Each step felt heavier than the last. Her tears fell freely now, streaking her cheeks, her breathing uneven. She could barely see the doors through the blur of pain and humiliation. The crowd watched. Some looked uncomfortable. Some looked entertained. Most looked indifferent. That indifference cut deeper than the manager's insults. This is how it ends, Aaliyah thought, not with help, not with kindness, just silence. She reached the edge of the rug near the doors and stopped. Her shoulders shook violently. She pressed a hand to her mouth, stifling a sob. "I tried," she whispered to herself. "I really tried." In her mind, she saw her mother lying in bed, weak, waiting, trusting her tomorrow morning. The thought crushed her. Aaliyah bent forward slightly, her strength giving out. She felt like she might collapse right there on the marble floor, and still no one came. No one said stop. No one said this is wrong. No one said let her speak. The manager crossed his arms, clearly done with the situation. "Let's move this along," he said. "We have guests arriving." Arriving, the word echoed. Aaliyah let out a broken sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "I'm leaving," she said again, her voice barely audible. "I'm sorry." She took one more step. That's when the man spoke again, but this time his voice was different, lower, colder. "No," he said. The single word stopped her. It stopped the guards. It stopped the manager. It stopped the room. Aaliyah turned slowly. Man stepped forward, placing himself between her and the manager. His posture was relaxed, but there was an unmistakable authority in the way he stood. "I said no," he repeated. The manager scoffed. "You don't get to decide that." The man met his gaze steadily. "Actually," he said, "I do." The manager laughed dismissively. "And who exactly do you think you are?" For a moment, the man said nothing. He looked at Aaliyah, really looked at her. His expression softened, not with pity, but with respect. "You don't deserve this," he said quietly, just loud enough for her to hear. Her lips trembled. "Thank you," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "But it doesn't matter." The man shook his head. "It does." The manager rolled his eyes. "This is ridiculous." He turned to the guards. "Escort them both out." The guards hesitated. The man slowly reached into his coat pocket. The movement was subtle, but it sent a ripple through the room. Aaliyah's heart skipped. The manager's smile faltered just slightly. The man pulled out his phone, not to record, not to call security. He checked the screen calmly, then looked up. "You might want to rethink that," he said evenly. The manager sneered. "Or what?" The man held his gaze. "Or you're going to regret the way you treated her," he said. The lobby fell into an uneasy silence. Aaliyah stood there, shaking, caught between despair and something unfamiliar. Protection. Whatever was about to happen, she could feel it. The storm had reached its darkest point. And the silence before the truth was finally breaking. The man lowered his phone slowly, his movements unhurried, as if the chaos in the lobby no longer applied to him. The manager scoffed, trying to reclaim control. "I don't have time for this," he snapped. "Sir, step away. This woman is trespassing." The man didn't raise his voice. "She's standing," he said calmly. "Not stealing, not harassing anyone, just standing." His tone wasn't confrontational, but it carried weight. Aaliyah stood behind him now, her breath shallow, her hands clenched in the fabric of her coat. She felt exposed, small, and strangely safe all at once. The manager pointed toward the doors. "This is a luxury hotel, not a waiting room for—" He stopped himself, but the implication was clear. The man's eyes narrowed. "Finish that sentence," he said quietly. The manager bristled. "I don't need to justify my decisions to you." The man nodded once. "Then you won't mind justifying them to your superiors." A few people in the crowd exchanged looks. The manager laughed again, but it sounded forced. "My superiors trust my judgment. Do they trust your prejudice?" the man asked. The word hit hard, prejudice. The manager's face flushed. "You're making accusations." "I'm making observations," the man replied. "And so is everyone else." He gestured subtly toward the phones raised in the crowd. The manager glanced around, suddenly aware of how many eyes were watching. His confidence wavered just a little. "Sir," he said tightly, "I don't know who you think you are, but—" The man turned to Aaliyah. "What's your name?" he asked gently. She blinked, surprised by the softness of his voice. "Aaliyah," she whispered. "Aaliyah Brooks." "That's a beautiful name," he said, offering a small, reassuring smile. "Aaliyah, you're welcome to stay right here." The words washed over her like warmth. Her voice broke. "I don't want to cause trouble." "You're not," he said firmly. "You're being targeted." The manager stepped forward angrily. "This conversation is over." The man didn't look at him. "Aaliyah," he continued, "why did you come here today?" Her chest tightened. She hesitated, glancing around at the crowd. Shame and fear battled inside her, but something in his expression, steady, patient, gave her courage. "My mother is sick," she said softly. "She needs medication. The clinic told me someone staying here could help." The lobby grew quiet. The man nodded slowly, absorbing her words. "What's your mother's name?" "Lorraine," Aaliyah replied. "How long has she been ill?" "Almost a year." The manager scoffed loudly. "This is not a sob story contest." The man turned to him, his gaze sharp now. "You will not speak to her again." The authority in his voice was unmistakable. The manager opened his mouth, then closed it. Aaliyah's heart pounded. The man turned back to her. "You did the right thing," he said. "Asking for help takes courage." Tears streamed down Aaliyah's face. "It didn't feel like it." "Courage rarely does," he replied. The guards shifted uneasily. The crowd leaned in, sensing the shift. The manager straightened his jacket, trying to regain composure. "Sir, unless you are a guest of this hotel, I'm going to ask you to leave as well." The man smiled faintly. "Oh," he said, "I'm very much a guest." The manager smirked. "Then you should know our policies." "I helped write them," the man replied. The words landed like a shockwave. A hush fell over the lobby. Aaliyah's breath caught. The manager stared at him. "Excuse me?" The man reached into his coat again, this time pulling out a sleek leather wallet. He opened it just enough to reveal a platinum card with the hotel's emblem etched in gold. The manager's eyes widened slightly. "I'm checking in under the name Jonathan Hale," the man said evenly. "Does that ring a bell?" The manager's face drained of color. Aaliyah felt dizzy. Jonathan Hale. She had heard that name before. Everyone had. He was more than just an investor. He was a legend in the business world, a billionaire philanthropist known for funding hospitals, scholarships, and housing projects. And he was standing right in front of her. The manager swallowed hard. "Mr. Hale, I didn't realize—" "No," Jonathan said calmly. "You didn't." The crowd erupted into whispers. "That's him." "Oh my God, he owns half the city." Jonathan didn't acknowledge them. He looked at Aaliyah again. "I was supposed to meet someone from the clinic today," he said. "A young woman named Aaliyah." Her heart stopped. That's me," she whispered. Jonathan nodded. "I thought so." The manager took a step back. "I can explain," he said quickly. Jonathan raised a hand. "Save it," he said. The balance of power had shifted completely, and everyone in that lobby could feel it. The silence that followed Jonathan Hale's name was deafening. It wasn't the quiet of peace. It was the stunned stillness of realization, the kind that makes people hold their breath without meaning to. Even the air in the lobby seemed to freeze, suspended between disbelief and truth. The hotel manager's confident posture collapsed in real time. His shoulders stiffened, his jaw slackened, the color drained from his face so fast it looked almost unreal. Mr. Hale, he stammered, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I had no idea it was you. Jonathan didn't respond immediately. He simply looked at the man, really looked at him, with a calm that was far more terrifying than anger. That, Jonathan said finally, is exactly the problem. The manager swallowed hard. If I had known, you would have behaved differently, Jonathan interrupted quietly. The question hung in the air. The manager opened his mouth, closed it, then nodded, shame flickering across his features. Yes, he admitted. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Jonathan turned slightly, gesturing toward Aaliyah without touching her. And that, he said, is why this conversation matters. Aaliyah stood frozen, her mind struggling to catch up with what was happening. Her heart raced, her ears rang, and her hands trembled at her sides. This man, this powerful, composed stranger had been waiting for her. The manager cleared his throat. Mr. Hale, I assure you we treat all guests with respect. Jonathan raised an eyebrow. She wasn't treated with respect. Well, the manager said quickly, she wasn't a guest. She was invited, Jonathan said firmly. By me. The words struck like thunder. The crowd collectively inhaled. The manager stumbled back a half step. You invited her. Yes, Jonathan replied, because she was recommended by the oncology unit I fund, because her mother is fighting for her life, and because I wanted to hear her story before deciding how to help. He turned to Aaliyah. I'm sorry I'm late, he said gently. Travel delays. Aaliyah's knees nearly buckled. You're the one, she whispered. Jonathan nodded. I am. Tears streamed freely down her face now, not from humiliation, but from shock, from release, from the sudden, overwhelming realization that the hope she had clung to so desperately had been real all along. I tried to wait, she said, her voice breaking. I told them. I know, Jonathan said softly. I saw everything. He turned back to the manager, his voice shifting, still calm, but edged with unmistakable authority. Let us be very clear, Jonathan said. You did not remove a disturbance from this lobby. The manager said nothing. You publicly humiliated a woman because of how she looked, Jonathan continued. You assumed she didn't belong because she didn't fit your idea of wealth. The manager's hands shook. And you did it, Jonathan added, in front of dozens of witnesses. The lobby was completely silent now. Phones remained raised, recording every word. I can explain, the manager said weakly. Jonathan shook his head. No, you can listen. He gestured toward the concierge desk. Call corporate right now. The manager hesitated. Mr. Hale, please. Now, Jonathan said. The single word carried finality. The manager rushed to the phone, his movements stiff and frantic. As he spoke in hushed tones, his eyes darted nervously toward Jonathan, then toward the crowd. Aaliyah stood beside Jonathan, still shaking. Are you okay? He asked her quietly. She nodded, wiping her face with trembling fingers. I think so. You don't have to stand, Jonathan said. Please sit. A staff member hurried over with a chair, suddenly attentive, suddenly deferential. Aaliyah sat, overwhelmed by the abrupt shift in how she was treated. Moments ago, she had been unwanted. Now people hovered. The manager returned, his face pale. They're on the line, he said. Jonathan took the phone. Yes, he said into it. This is Jonathan Hale. A pause. Yes, I'm in the lobby. Another pause. I need you to hear this, Jonathan continued, his voice carrying clearly. Your hotel manager just engaged in discriminatory behavior toward a woman I personally invited. It was recorded by multiple guests. The manager looked like he might faint. I'm asking you, Jonathan said evenly, what your policy is regarding public misconduct and prejudice. The pause this time was longer. Jonathan listened, then nodded. Good, I agree. He handed the phone back to the manager. You're done here, Jonathan said. The manager stared at him. You're firing me? Jonathan met his gaze, effective immediately. A collective gasp filled the lobby. The manager's mouth opened, then closed. His shoulders slumped as security, now moving with purpose, stepped forward. This is a mistake, the manager whispered. No, Jonathan said calmly. This is accountability. The guards escorted the former manager away, his earlier arrogance replaced by humiliation that mirrored what he had inflicted moments before. The crowd parted in silence. When the doors closed behind him, Jonathan turned back to Aaliyah. I'm sorry you had to endure that, he said sincerely. No one deserves to be treated that way. Aaliyah struggled to find words. I didn't think anyone would believe me, she said softly. Jonathan smiled gently. I did, the moment I saw you. The tension in the room finally began to ease, but the impact of what had just happened would linger far longer, because the truth had been revealed, and nothing would ever be the same again. The lobby didn't return to normal. It couldn't. Too many truths had been exposed, too many assumptions shattered. Guests stood quietly now, no longer whispering, no longer recording, just watching as something rare unfolded in front of them. Grace. Jonathan turned fully toward Aaliyah, his attention unwavering. The chaos, the humiliation, the injustice, none of it defined this moment anymore. She did. Let's sit somewhere private, he said gently. You don't need an audience for what comes next. Aaliyah nodded, still overwhelmed. A staff member, newly nervous, newly respectful, quickly guided them to a quiet lounge just off the main lobby. Plush chairs, soft lighting, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline. Aaliyah sat slowly, her hands still trembling. Jonathan sat across from her, placing his phone on the table, his posture relaxed but attentive. Before we talk about anything else, he said, I want you to know something. She looked up. What happened back there, he continued, was not your fault, not even a little. Her eyes filled again. I kept wondering if I should have dressed differently, she admitted, if I should have spoken differently, if I was wrong somehow. Jonathan shook his head firmly. You were brave. And dignity doesn't come from clothes, it comes from character. The words landed deep. For the first time that day, Aaliyah felt her chest loosen. He leaned forward slightly. Tell me about your mother. Aaliyah swallowed, then began. She has late-stage cancer, she said. The medication helps manage the pain. Without it, her voice faltered. I don't know how she'll make it. Jonathan listened without interruption. No glances at his watch, no distracted nods, just full, present attention. How much is the medication? He asked gently. Aaliyah hesitated, then told him. Jonathan didn't flinch. Okay, he said simply. She blinked. Okay. Yes, he replied. I'll cover it, all of it, not just this month. Her breath caught. You don't have to, she began. I want to, Jonathan said, and not as charity, as responsibility. Tears streamed down her face again, but this time they felt different, lighter. I don't know how to thank you, she whispered. Jonathan smiled softly. Live. That's enough. He continued, I'll also arrange for your mother to be transferred to a facility with better support, one of the centers I fund. She'll receive the best care available. Aaliyah covered her mouth, shaking her head in disbelief. This can't be real. It is, Jonathan said, and it's only the beginning. He paused, then added, Tell me about you. Aaliyah laughed weakly through tears. There's not much to tell. I disagree, Jonathan said. You work 2 jobs, you care for your mother. You walked into a place that terrified you because someone you love needed help. He met her gaze. That tells me everything. She stared at him, stunned. I never finished school, she admitted quietly. I had to drop out to take care of my family. Jonathan nodded thoughtfully. Would you like to go back? Her heart skipped. I always wanted to study social work, she said, to help families like mine. Jonathan smiled. Then you will, her breath hitched. What? I'll cover your education, he said. Tuition, books, housing support, so you don't have to choose between survival and dreams. Aaliyah broke down completely. She sobbed not from pain, but from release, from the sudden, overwhelming sense that the world had finally tilted in her favor. I don't deserve this, she cried. Jonathan's voice was gentle but firm. You deserve dignity, opportunity, respect. He let the silence settle, then added, As for what happened today, he reached for his phone. The hotel's corporate office has already initiated a full investigation, he said. Every staff member involved will undergo retraining, policies will change, and the footage will be reviewed. He looked at her. Not for revenge, for justice. Aaliyah nodded. I don't want anyone else to feel the way I did, she said. Jonathan smiled. That's exactly why I believe in you. Later that day, Jonathan personally escorted Aaliyah back through the lobby, not as an outcast, but as an honored guest. People moved aside. Some lowered their eyes, others nodded respectfully. The same space that had tried to break her now bore witness to her worth. A car waited outside to take her home. Before she got in, Jonathan handed her a card. My direct number, he said. Call any time. She clutched it like something sacred. Thank you, she said again, her voice steady now. For seeing me, he smiled. I always will. As the car pulled away, Aaliyah looked back at the hotel, no longer a symbol of fear, but of transformation. For the first time in years, the future didn't feel like a wall. It felt like an open door. 5 years later, the morning sunlight poured gently through wide windows, warming a home that once existed only in dreams. Aaliyah Brooks stood in the kitchen, barefoot on hardwood floors, stirring tea on the stove. The walls were painted a soft cream, decorated with framed photographs, smiling faces, graduation caps, hospital rooms turned hopeful, moments frozen in gratitude and survival. Down the hallway, a familiar cough echoed, but this time it wasn't filled with pain. "Mom," Aaliyah called. "I'm fine, baby," Lorraine's voice answered, stronger now, steadier. "Just getting dressed." Aaliyah smiled. Lorraine Brooks stood a few moments later in the doorway, dressed neatly, her hair short but healthy, her eyes bright. Cancer had taken years from her life, but it had not taken her life. She was alive and thriving. Aaliyah poured 2 cups of tea and handed one to her mother, their fingers brushing in a quiet, unspoken celebration of how far they had come. "You're going to be late," Lorraine teased. "Big day." Aaliyah laughed softly. "I know." Outside, the city buzzed awake, but for Aaliyah, this day wasn't about rushing, it was about purpose. She glanced at the framed diploma hanging near the doorway. Master of Social Work. With honors, the girl who once apologized for existing now walked with confidence rooted in empathy. She worked at a community advocacy center, one funded by Jonathan Hale, helping families navigate medical care, housing, and legal protection. Families like hers. Later that morning, Aaliyah stood in a community hall filled with people, mothers, fathers, children, many of whom carried the same quiet fear she once had. She stepped up to the podium. "I know what it's like," she began, her voice calm and steady, "to feel invisible, to be judged before you're heard, to be told without words that you don't belong." The room was silent. "I also know what it's like," she continued, "to be seen by one person who chooses compassion instead of comfort." She paused, emotion flickering in her eyes. "That choice changed my life." In the back of the room, Jonathan Hale watched quietly, pride softening his features. He hadn't come as a billionaire. He hadn't come as an investor, he had come as a witness. After the event, he approached her with a smile. "You were incredible," he said. Aaliyah smiled back. "You started this." Jonathan shook his head. "No, I just opened a door, you walked through it." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. "Do you ever think about that day?" he asked. Aaliyah nodded. "I do, not with anger anymore, but with clarity." She looked around the room, at the people laughing, talking, healing. "I learned something important," she said. "Power doesn't reveal character, pressure does." Jonathan smiled. "That might be the truest thing I've heard." That evening, Aaliyah returned home, where Lorraine waited with dinner ready and laughter in her eyes. They sat together, sharing stories, gratitude woven into every word. As night fell, Aaliyah stepped onto the balcony, looking out over the city that once felt so cruel and now felt full of possibility. She whispered a quiet thank you, not just for the help she received, but for the strength she discovered within herself. Because the truth was this: she had always been worthy. She had always belonged. She had just needed one moment of humanity to remind the world and herself of that fact. Never judge a person by how they look or where they stand today, because compassion has the power to change lives and dignity costs nothing. One act of kindness can become someone else's miracle. If this story moved you, please like the video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful, inspirational stories that remind us what humanity looks like at its best.